You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm your host Dustin, and today I have with me Tony, and we are here to cover all of the news related to all the streaming services that are out there from the past week, the week of October 30th through November 5th. I want to apologize up front because I'm a little sick. So there is not as much as the previous weeks, but there is a good chunk of stuff to discuss. So starting off with Netflix, there's only one thing that we've got for Netflix this time around, and this actually just happened to be popping up earlier this week on Monday. Seth Meyers, he has a stand-up special that's going to be over on Netflix. We actually mentioned it a little while ago, but the episode is called Seth Meyers' Lobby Baby. If you happen to watch Late Night with Seth Meyers, he tends to have a lot of political jokes intertwined into his act, I guess is the best way to put it. But there's going to be a specific button that you can use while you're watching his special on Netflix, where if you hear a joke about President Trump, you'll be able to actually skip it, using the same idea of skip intro or next episode prompts that you normally see on Netflix anyway. They'll have a spot where you can actually just skip the joke if you want to skip the joke. That way, I guess he's trying to appeal to his not core audience that probably wouldn't be watching this in the first place, but it's kind of unique. The article specifically says that he reached out to Netflix specifically and asked them if they could do this. And while there's not a whole lot that goes into this, there obviously has to be some chapter marks in order to be able to skip forward past these specific jokes. But I feel like it opens up the door for potentially other comedians that do specials on Netflix, specifically because, let's be honest, anybody who does comedy is going to have jokes that are going to be slightly not suitable for specific audiences. So I really hope this doesn't become something where skip forward and pass a joke up. This happens to just be specifically related to Trump, but I hope this isn't a direction that we're going.
I'm not a fan. I mean, I know that you have such things as like Bandersnatch. The point of Bandersnatch is that you can choose your own journey. As you go along, you can choose what the character does and, different plot points and stuff like that. And I think in that context, it's fine. It's interesting. It's different. You're kind of driving the content. But in terms of a comedy special, I don't feel good about that. And yeah, Trump jokes. If you don't like Trump, then you might not appreciate these jokes, and that's fine for almost all comedy. I mean, I think comedians pick fun at a whole bunch of different things, and that's kind of the point. I mean, there are some off-limit topics, and that's, that's fair, but, if you're going to take shots at the President of the United States, I don't know, I feel like that, to me, is fair game. What's to stop Netflix from doing this for other comedy specials? What's Netflix to do this for either their new shows or their other comedians to have chapter marks on everything? I know it's a gag that he's going to do, and that's fine. Just I'm not comfortable with the idea of you kind of picking and choosing the content that you want.
I want to make something very clear. If you are somebody who's going to watch a comedy special, personally, I don't watch a lot of comedy specials. I watch occasionally one here or there. But if I'm going to watch a comedy special, I'm going to seek out comedians that I tend to like, and I know what type of humor they are trying to achieve. So if I had a problem with somebody based off of the type of content that they're trying to get across, I'm not going to watch it. That's just the way it goes. I mean, I would imagine that would be the case with the vast majority of people. While there are some people who surely could want to check it out for the sake of checking it out, and then I guess use this feature. All right, so then moving over to Amazon, there was a little bit of news that came out regarding Amazon pulling movies from the theaters faster to put them over on Prime Video. This specifically happened because there's been some movies that have done very well in theaters, and there's movies that have not done very well. And there was an interview that was done with The Hollywood Reporter with Amazon Studios head Jennifer Salke, and she said that they want to get the movies over to Prime Video subscribers as soon as possible, but specifically they have to fulfill contractual obligations around the theatrical releases. So she specifically cited a movie called Late Night, which came out earlier this year. I believe it was in June. And she said that that movie did not do very well in theaters, but it's ended up being watched by tens of millions of people on the streaming service. We want to get these things over there, but it's kind of a crapshoot because we don't know which ones are going to really do really well in the theaters, like something like Manchester by the Sea that ended up getting nominated for Academy Awards, or something like Late Night that didn't do very well in the theaters, but then did remarkably well on the streaming service. So by all means, I mean, as a Prime Video subscriber, I want to have those videos as soon as I can. I also am not going to go out of my way to see them in theaters, knowing that they're coming to Prime Video. And it's nice to see that Amazon recognizes that sometimes the theatrical windows that they have set with, obviously, the different theater companies has been a little bit too much or too long.
This reminds me of Martin Scorsese. Yeah, his new recent movie, he pushed so hard to have it released in theaters, and Netflix, this is the first time, took up this idea of should they release the movie in theaters or not? Because usually their movies are just direct to Netflix.
So to be clear, let me clarify that. That's not exactly true. So they tend to do small releases, especially for their awards films that they're trying to get nominated for Oscars and stuff, because they're required to have them shown at a theater before they make their way to the service. So most of the time you'll see a film that they're looking for, nominations for Oscars or something like that. You'll see it released in very, very small select theaters one week, and then the next week it'll show up on the service. The Irishman is the first one that's actually getting a wide release across the country. It's the big difference.
Honestly, I had no clue that they released in tiny theaters. Well, the point I was going to make is essentially is like you just said, if they wanted to be for awards, then they have to release in theaters, which is, that's a different point that I think is kind of dumb. But yeah, it just raises a question of what should these companies do if they want the prestige, right? You have to release it in the theaters, and if you release it in the theaters, you kind of, if it's a hit, you get that extra, box office money too. And then you put it on your streaming service, but it's not really exclusive. So it's kind of a hit or miss. I have my own opinion on it. I think that it doesn't hurt the streaming service, in my opinion, if you choose correctly.
I agree. I mean, ultimately, it just comes down to, does the film warrant a major release in theaters? Amazon has gone the method of releasing all of their films in theaters and having a normal theatrical run, and they don't end up on the service. It's just this year that started to change. Manchester by the Sea came out, I believe, at the end of 2017. There was The Big Sick that came out. That was another one that did really well in theaters for Amazon. Both of those films did really well, but didn't end up actually on the service to watch right away either. So the thing is, while I can appreciate the fact that they want to build that acclaim that comes with whatever they're doing, and that is something that they clearly want, the issue is that not every single one of the projects that they work on is clearly going to be up to task. They must have known that, because when you're releasing a film in the middle of June, typically studios wait till the end of the year to release the films that are going to be up for, they're going to be pushing towards trying to get awards for or nominations. So I'm all for them trying to get the stuff out. Really, it just comes down to the individual property, film, movie that they're working on. Does it warrant the release that it's getting? There are films that Netflix or that Amazon does that go directly to the service and are never out in theaters. That happens too. So they clearly have an idea. I think it's just a matter of them having a little bit more experience and figuring out which ones make more sense for the service rather than going the theatrical route. So it's one of those things where it's only a matter of time before we start seeing this a little bit more often with other high-profile creators and directors coming over to the streaming services, making projects and looking for these larger theatrical releases, because that's what they're used to. That's what they expect.
I agree. If you're going to put out, like Bright, the movie with Will Smith and somebody else, it wasn't the best movie in the world, but it had a big name actor who can draw in, a relatively, decent box office. Martin Scorsese, I know not everyone loves him, but he's a big name producer, and he can get people in the theaters. With those two examples, and there's going to be other ones out there, it raises a problem for Netflix, raises a problem for Amazon, and all these other streaming services. Is you can get it in tiny tiny, theater chains, and that's fine. You can kind of bully them around. But if you're going to try to get into like AMC theaters and whatnot, you're going to have to play by a bunch of different rules. And AMC theaters and other theater chains, they have rules of how long movies have to stay in the theaters before they have certain releases, and there's a bunch of rules for all those different things. Martin Scorsese as well, just he is such a big name person that people are going to go to theaters. So I guess my focus on smaller movies is and lesser known creators is, I think that Amazon can shorten that window. But for some of these bigger names that can bring in some money, that's when to me it's like, well, how are they really going to get around that?
Two real quick things for Apple TV. First off, it was announced that ahead of the launch of Apple TV, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the launch of Apple TV Plus, but Apple TV app has landed on select Sony TVs. So that's in addition to the Samsung TVs, the Rokus, and the Amazon Fire devices that had already been added to. So they ended up getting all of those devices prior to the service actually launching. The other Apple news is that Apple Music student plans now include Apple TV Plus. So if you are a student who currently has a student plan for Apple Music, you have access to Apple TV Plus, which will not change the price. It's currently $4.99 per month for Apple Music. For the student plan, it'll include Apple TV Plus through the time that you either graduate or drop out, or you decide to cancel the subscription to Apple Music. But it's specifically said that you'll have Apple TV Plus, but it says that the window is open for a very limited time. So if you're a student and you're looking forward to potentially having Apple Music and Apple TV Plus for only $4.99 a month, now's the time to jump on that. Moving over to Disney Plus, this was an interesting thing that just popped up earlier today. So a lot of people have talked about this in the past. There's been some articles online talking about how Disney has some of their movies tied up with other services. There's specific movies that are still on Netflix and that will still continue to be on Netflix until the end of 2019. Then they will come off of Netflix and then they will go back. They will jump over, probably release very shortly afterwards, right away on Disney Plus. But one of the things that's really interesting is that one of the major pushing points from Disney at the time of the announcement was that the entire all the Star Wars films were going to be on the service, or at least the Skywalker saga. And Solo and Rogue One were the two that were questionable about whether or not they were going to be popping up on the service because they were tied up over at Netflix. Now, what's really interesting is that it turns out Starz had a deal with Disney where the Star Wars films were over at Starz, the premium TV channel. Disney decided to go back to Starz and say, what will it take for us to be able to get these back? Now, I'm sure Disney paid some money to get the rights back. That wasn't disclosed, but part of the agreement was that there would be a Starz advertisement at the bottom of a sign up page for Disney Plus. So if you're signing up for Disney Plus on launch day, you go to the site, you're like, okay, I'm gonna subscribe to Disney Plus. You go there, you scroll down at the very bottom of the page, you're gonna see an ad for Starz. Starz is not associated with Disney other than, past licensing rights, but it's kind of interesting because it shows the lengths that Disney's trying to go to ensure that they get some of their properties back as quickly as possible. I doubt we're going to see anything with Netflix, though.
Yeah, see, I'm totally okay with this type of an ad where it's not like intrusive. It's not, trying to super get your money. Ads these days are just very incessant and annoying. Disney has a point of this ad. It's trying to get their content back, and I think it's a very simple way for these streaming services to either get the rights completely back or to at least share the rights on these properties. I hope that different platforms kind of take the strategy in the future of, if you want your content, just put a small little ad on the service. Don't make it, very intrusive, and, people can share. I like collaboration. I feel that this is a very minimal way for everyone to get what they want. I like this type of an ad.
Yeah. All right, so then jumping over to HBO Max, interestingly, the day after the massive presentation that we talked about last week, HBO made a deal with Bell Media up in Canada to bring a lot of the HBO Max titles over to Canada through Bell Media, and this is a deal that has already existed, but this extends the deal to include the HBO Max original programming, including the Gossip Girl reboot, the upcoming Kaylee Kukos, The Flight Attendant, as well as a number of other series. The interesting part behind this is, to me at least, shows that HBO's not super gung-ho about trying to roll out HBO Max as an international thing, at least as far as Canada goes, for the foreseeable future, because if they're making a deal for the programming to pop up over there. Now, I do remember I did say during the investor conference that they had last week, there was a question that was specifically asked about the rollouts in other countries and the pricing, and the presentation specifically said that the intent was when they roll out to international markets, the price would be cheaper based off of the median income for that area of the world, but also due to the limitations on the content available. That's important because if it does eventually roll out to, if HBO Max does roll out in some way, shape, or form up to Canada, it could end up being cheaper because a lot of that content that is going to be exclusive to HBO Max, at least here in the United States, will also be available on some other service. So it reduces the exclusivity of the app. So that would obviously drive down the price. To me, it just shows that they're not really looking at the international side of things, because I feel like Canada would probably be one of the first markets you would expand to. And this deal does not seem like they're going that direction. It seems like they're all about continuing to do what they've been doing. We just talked about, I believe, last week about how they just signed a new deal with Sky over in Europe, continue to bring HBO content over there. They're locking in these deals around the same exact time that they're announcing HBO Max, and it just feels like the focus is going to be, at least here in the States, if they have subscribers elsewhere, it's going to be for a significantly less price point.
I don't think they're necessarily abandoning the international market. I think getting into the international markets, it's just a very complex thing, and I feel like this is just a really good stopgap measure until they can really get all the ducks in a row and build out the infrastructure, build out the licensing agreements for each country to get back some of their content, to play their stuff in these regions. HBO Max is coming out in the United States in about 6 months, in May 2020, quote unquote. If it's going to come to the United States, in 6 to 7 months, some of these projects, it takes time after the U.S. release, then to roll out in international markets, Canada, then, Europe, then kind of like the rest of the world. This to me is just a stopgap measure between here and there.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is kind of a bigger one. Peacock had some news pop up. There was a report over on CNBC stating that NBC Universal is looking at the potential of releasing Peacock to be free for all users. Basically, the side of this is, rather than having a subscription to the service and then have ads included on the service, similar to the way CBS All Access is. If you're unfamiliar with the way that works, CBS All Access offers a subscription plan for their service at $5.99, but that does not get rid of the ads. It just allows you to have access to the content. The content that, might I add, they have roughly about one new series per month, and while you have access to the on-demand library, that's the extent of the original content is that. At the same time, they do offer a higher price tier at $9.99, which the entire service is then ad-free. However, NBC Universal is looking at Peacock and thinking, well, maybe we'll release this free to everyone, and ads will be the way that we drive, that we make our money, and we'll offer a higher price tier to basically offset the fact that they won't, if people don't want ads, they'll be able to get it, but this way it gets us a lot of people who are interested in the service right away, and they'll deal with the ads because it's free. In the report, there was actually a mention that back in January, NBC Universal CEO Steve Burke actually told CNBC that he expects to make $5 per month from every single user on the service from advertising by itself. So when you put that in perspective, that means essentially if you make the service for free, you're still getting about $5 per person for every single person who's on the service. So if they had a good chunk of subscribers that were all free and they're making about $5 off of those ads every single month, it could really offset the cost. And then obviously offering a higher price tier, a $5 service, a tier at, to get rid of the ads, they could then in turn basically just make the money directly from the customer, but not have to charge anywhere near as much as other places that are out there. It really does feel like they're all in on this, what they're calling in the business world, AVOD, which is advertising video on demand. So the thing is, I see this because it's something different and unique compared to everybody else, and it sets them apart. So I'm not going to say it's not far-fetched. Now, in the report, it did say that they learned these details from sources who wanted to remain anonymous. Of course, we know that companies tend to sometimes float things in the media to get a reaction, to gauge whether or not the interest level would be significant enough to actually go that route, especially with them having somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 6 months out before they actually launch. It is entirely possible that they could be floating that idea to see how it would work, to basically shift their focus only over to the advertising video on demand for the time being, when they could easily just take out the ads after the fact.
Given NBC's strategy, and it doesn't seem like they're in a massive push to create newer content. I like this approach. It reminds me a lot of Hulu, especially back in the early days, before I got super obsessed with ads. You can watch the service, play some ads, and you can enjoy the content. I don't mind sitting there waiting 30 minutes to watch ads while I watch The Office, in Parks and Rec. I think that's totally reasonable. Just given NBC's strategy, I feel like, this AVOD strategy might be very beneficial to them, given that they're not kind of going for the public en masse. They're going after a select group of people. And so keeping it open, keeping it quote unquote free with advertisements. This is good given NBC strategy. I could see CBS maybe also doing something like this, in terms of, they have a couple, original content, but in my opinion, NBC and CBS are kind of sort of playing the same game. However, I feel like this strategy is only useful for, smaller tier services who aren't, trying to go after the general public. They know their lane, they know what they're doing. I think this is fine.
All right, so moving outside of the main and minor service for that matter, we're going to move over to some other tech news related to some streaming services. First up, Walmart is reportedly looking to sell off its Vudu streaming service. For those of you unaware of what Vudu is a company that acts just like Amazon or Apple TV in the sense that you can purchase things, watch them, you can create a library. Recently, they started going into the side of streaming stuff. They have a bunch of content that you can watch free with ads. They also have a bunch of content that they started creating specifically for the service. Mr. Mom, there was a Mr. Mom remake that came out, I want to say back in September. I could have those dates wrong though, but there was a Mr. Mom series that they rebooted and did a television series for based off of the 80s film starring Michael Keaton. That was an original Vudu show that they had, but they have a lot of other stuff. But a lot of the business for Vudu has always been a place to buy and rent movies. It was one of the few retailers that was originally included in the Movies Anywhere switchover. If you're unfamiliar with that, movies used to be in Ultraviolet or Disney Movies Anywhere, or they had a variety of different versions, but a lot of big companies got together, including Universal, Fox, Disney, Warner Brothers, and Sony, and they got together and they basically created Movies Anywhere as like a joint effort to make sure that the digital market was propped up in a significant way by the studios. Instead of having a variety of different formats, they decided to go one route, and Movies Anywhere was the route they went. There's still a few studios out there that haven't jumped on board, such as Lionsgate and Paramount. There are two that haven't jumped over. MGM, I believe, hasn't jumped over either. Anyway, the point is, they were a pretty big service because they were one of the few retailers that wasn't owned by a tech company. Apple obviously had Apple TV, you had Amazon. There was a couple of other retailers that were involved in the initial one. There's other ones out there that some people probably don't even know that you could buy movies, like Fandango. You can buy movies through. That's included on Movies Anywhere. But anyway, long story short, Vudu is a company that existed before. It turns out Walmart bought them for $100 million back in 2010. The question is, who is even large enough to buy something like this? Who would want to even get in the market of having this online place? It's not going to be a studio. The major companies like Apple and Amazon already have it, so there's no real reason that they would need it. The only thing I could think of is if they were going to get it for a low price, they could absorb the customer base that already has the movies and just port their libraries over to an existing service like Amazon. I'm not real sure that that's the route that's going to go, but it'll be interesting to see. It also begs the question of why exactly is Walmart interested in selling this at this point? While the streaming service side of things is a very jam-packed area of tech right now, it doesn't seem like I understand that they're probably not making an enormous amount of money off of this entire service, but there has to be people who are buying movies digitally. I know personally I buy movies digitally on Vudu rather than a lot of other services just because of the sales that they consistently have. But it begs the question of why are they deciding to get out of this now unless they're just trying to free up some cash for some other projects that they're working on.
Yeah, Vudu was always a weird property for Walmart to have because it, at the time it was kind of like, an online version of Blockbuster, quote unquote Blockbuster, God bless them. And so for Walmart at the time, they want to be the store that sells everything. So yeah, digital movies, that kind of makes sense. Right now, it really does, and it's kind of taking away from Walmart's business objectives. In recent years, they've kind of had a focus on getting back to who they are and trying to eliminate wasteful investments. Vudu is totally not a wasteful investment. It makes money. It is a great service. It's just not really fit in line with what Walmart's trying to do. And right now, you could almost think of, well, Tony, Walmart's making a very big push into their online store and their online presence, and they have. If you use the Walmart's website about 2 years ago, it was dreadful. It was awful. You couldn't find anything. It was slow. It just was ugly. But now you use it and it's like, okay, it is usable. I actually kind of like to use it. Unfortunately, it doesn't have everything I want like Amazon, but it's a really good store and it's really propped up their retail business. Selling movies, yeah, that makes money, but I don't think it makes enough for Walmart to keep investing, a whole bunch of people on that team, the infrastructure costs and all that stuff, trying to get, licensing approval for these different, labels and studios to sell movies digitally and digital rights and all that stuff. It just seems antithetical to what Walmart is trying to do. This is, in my opinion, kind of just an acquisition hire. You're buying Vudu for what it is. It's going to be infrastructure and already set up, licensing agreements that you can kind of incorporate into your own. Personally, I think this is a great bet for Amazon. As long as they don't have to shell out too much money for it, it's going to bolster their service. It's going to, like you said, they can take over that customer base. Although when you think about it, it's like how much of a unique customer base do they have since they're part of, Movies Anywhere where, you could transfer the movies that you bought. So it's like, well, is there really a big customer base to buy? But it's more of a philosophical question. This is a great Amazon hire. I don't know who else would buy them just because no one else is really, maybe Apple, but there's no one else really in that space of, selling movies online, like you said. So they're going to have a very niche buyer market, and that's going to really kind of drive the price down for Vudu. It just doesn't make sense for Walmart to keep this on anymore when they're not going to go, full in. If they were planning to go full in, then that's fine because Apple's kind of redone the iTunes store, and now they have like Apple TV Plus, and they've really focused on Apple Music and podcasts. They kind of doubled down on their online content, but Walmart's not trying to do that. And, they're trying to be all about sales, and if to be about that, then Vudu is kind of taking away from that goal.
All right, so that's going to move us to our last bit of news, which is NBA has unveiled a more affordable online subscription, which will include over 100 live games. Access to NBA TV will now be $6.99 per month, $59.99 annually, compared to the $129, which is less than half, which is a pretty good deal. But basically, subscribers to NBA TV will be able to access the service via NBA.com or through the NBA app on their tablet, smartphone, or gaming console. The channel won't show every single NBA game, but it will show over 100 live out-of-market games, as well as original programming and games from the WNBA, the NBA G League, and the NBA Summer League. So, if you are an NBA fan...
Yeah, they're just playing the NBA TV app, NBA TV channel, which does have a lot of games, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of games that come out, G League and WNBA and actual NBA games, but there's a significant less amount of games in comparison to NBA League Pass. So if you're the casual NBA fan, I totally recommend the service, but if you're like super, super hardcore, this service might not necessarily be for you because it doesn't have, every single game to watch. I think that this is great for, for NBA, just because shelling out, for league pass is it's really expensive. And I wouldn't do that. And I like the NBA a lot, but this is a lot more manageable to where it's like, okay, given the rest of the streaming sphere and the rest of, how much we pay for Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, all those add up. And it's like, am I going to pay a crap ton of money just to watch sports games. And I think this is a great, compromise for, the NBA to be like, hey, I want to put out a service that meets a group of people that, they don't want to go full in, but they do want to watch a bunch of games.
All right. So that is all of the news that we have. We do have just a couple of real quick topics. So last time around, we talked about a CNBC article talking about how and why AT&T is getting into the streaming market. And specifically, the article deals with the fact that subscriber rates for paid TV, such as cable and through AT&T Uverse or satellite through DirecTV, they've been losing subscribers for those services greatly, and they need to make up for it. From the AT&T perspective, it makes sense to go after a media company to absorb them and to start creating content to drive a service to subsidize the fact that they're losing customers on the other side of from the other side of things. Not that they're going to lose all of their Uverse customers or all their satellite customers, but they're losing a significant number of satellite customers every single quarter. While they're not necessarily looking at HBO Max as a complete replacement, they have been talking a lot about at&t TV Now, which is basically a software program where basically once you have the internet, you have the ability to watch television through the internet, similar to other paid TV services out there like YouTube TV and PlayStation View, which is going under, but services like that. So they're looking at HBO Max being bundled with at&t TV Now as a opportunity for customers who are leaving satellite as potentially even a cheaper option compared to what a lot of people already have as well.
So help me out. Isn't that what Uverse does? I mean, I don't have Uverse personally, so I'm trying to understand this. But isn't there an app version of Uverse that you can watch that does this already?
Yeah, so there is, but you have to subscribe to Uverse. That's the difference. You have to actually be a subscriber to Uverse.
Cable, with the actual cable part, you can't just subscribe to Uverse itself.
Not by itself. You would have to subscribe to at&t TV Now, which is something they just rolled out a couple weeks back, but that is a service that is standalone. It's like YouTube TV, where you have a select group of channels, not the thousands of channels. Like at&t Uverse right now, they're like base packages. I think they start at somewhere like 450 different channels, but then you have HD channels on top of that, so it doubles it. So there's a lot of channels. That's like the same thing as Comcast, how Comcast has Xfinity, cable service, and you have the standard 1,000 something channels of content that you can watch at any given time. However, it's extremely expensive. at&t TV Now is meant to be more like YouTube TV and be on the lines. I know YouTube TV is $50 a month, but you only get 60 channels. And while it's this channel, it's the vast majority of the channels that you get are the ones that most people are seeking out anyway. You do have significantly less, but you are, more importantly, paying a significantly less amount of money.
I gotcha. I guess due to Uverse and Comcast and Verizon's Fios and those types of services, since they're cable-based and they're not internet-based, they have a lot of extra costs due to
the infrastructure
cable services. Yeah, infrastructure. So that makes more sense now. It's it's not just based on how many channels that you get. Because I have YouTube TV and I get a lot of channels, a lot of the major channels. You don't I don't get duplicates of certain ones in HD because it's all HD. So I was trying to understand why is there disconnect? Why can't they just rebrand Uverse for this? But it makes sense that they kind of have to keep it separate due to the fact of the different infrastructures. So, and there was
before they rolled out at&t TV Now, there was a DirecTV version of this, and it got absorbed by the new at&t TV Now, where the DirecTV one, it was meant specifically towards the people who were unsubscribing from satellite due to the cost as a cheaper option because you just needed internet access. And now it's just absorbed into the one service of at&t TV Now. And I know in the conference last week, they name dropped in the very beginning that they will be offering packages at the launch of HBO Max that will bundle HBO Max with at&t TV Now for your live TV options. So they're looking more of they call it a software-based system compared to the hardware-based system, which is you have to have a receiver box in your household in order to actually get the service.
A little bit off topic, but don't you find it funny how we cut the cord, we went to streaming, got rid of cable, and now we're coming back to bundling. I find that a little humorous. Yeah, just due to AT&T and them being an ISP, and I can see how they're they're bleeding subscribers for DirecTV, for Uverse in general. People are cutting the cord because it's just really expensive. It makes sense why they're going into AT&T now. Not only do they get potentially back those subscribers, it also helps drive traffic, because more people who use their network, and pay them, for internet, either for home or cellular. These streaming projects feed into that side of the business as well. Is it's like, we're going to get these new customers, and then maybe they're going to go grab AT&T due to a special deal or whatnot. So the streaming part feeds into them in that way, but it also kind of helps either replace or I guess stops the bleeding for people leaving Uverse. It kind of highlights the point of, like, for Verizon and Comcast and AT&T, of their business models are totally changing. People are getting rid of cable even more so now than ever. And then satellite TV like DirecTV, and I'm probably missing one because is Dish Network still a thing?
It is, but it's the same thing as DirecTV. It's also losing subscribers like
it's losing subscribers left and right. So they have to make up this revenue different ways. So they're doing what they can to stop it, and I think investors are catching on to it now. Finally more than ever, especially like AT&T's call. Investors were really keeping them to check of, like, what are you going to do? Because this is just a lot of extra money that we're missing out. So how are we going to replace it?
So then the other thing I wanted to quickly bring up is there's some confusion out there. I keep seeing multiple articles talking about the free options for HBO Max. I know we talked about this last week. I'm just going to briefly mention it. The only way you're getting HBO Max for free is if you are currently subscribed to AT&T and have an HBO service. You're already subscribed to HBO service, or you have one of their premium levels of service from AT&T. That's the only way at this point in time you're going to get HBO Max for free. When they say that you're getting it for free, it's you're getting HBO Max free because it's the same exact price of HBO, which you're currently paying for if you're subscribing through AT&T. So I know that there's been a lot of confusion online about how exactly you're going to get HBO Max for free. And there is no way you're going to get it for free, unless the only way you can get it for free and not already be subscribing to HBO is if you have the top tier unlimited data plan through AT&T. Then you'll be able to use it. You'll be able to get it as one of your premium channel options through the My AT&T Rewards program. That's way more details than I want to go into. But there's a lot of people out there that are saying, like, oh, if you have HBO Max or if you have HBO on Comcast, you'll get HBO Max for free. That's not true. You could, however, switch over to HBO Max and still be paying the same price. So technically you're getting it for free because you're not paying any more money. But that's a weird way of looking at it because it's not actually free. So just be aware of that. If you're reading things online, you're not going to get the thing for free in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, free doesn't always mean free. It just seems like either you can pay for it normally or you can buy it, you can be at an equivalent level to either buying it directly. You're just going to pay for HBO now directly, or there is an equivalent type thing going on for you to get it. So I totally understand the confusion. I mean, we do the show, and I was a little confused of how are they, you have HBO Go, you have HBO, you have HBO Now, you have AT&T Uverse. Now AT&T Uverse, AT&T's plan, and all these different things. And so I was a little confused of, okay, which is what is going on? So it just seems like you have this top tier of everything's equivalent. So you're going to get HBO now because you are essentially buying it almost, but you're on the same tier. And then there's these other paid ways to get it.
All right, so that's going to wrap up this episode. I want to remind everybody out there that you can head over to the website. The one thing that you should probably check out that is new to the site is over this past weekend, I put together a streaming services release calendar. So if you have any of the current streaming services, or you're going to be subscribing to Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, CBS All Access, Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, there is a release calendar over on the site, thestreamingwars.io /streaming. That is the direct address. But if you go over there, you'll actually see a calendar that is a detailed schedule of exactly when all of the new content's releasing. So while you're always going to be all over the internet seeing articles about what's new on Netflix in November, what's new on Prime Video in November, I've personally never seen, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but I personally have never seen a comprehensive list of all of the original content that's available on the variety of different services in one single location. Because of that, and due to the fact that, let's be honest, I want to know what's coming out so that we can be covering the stuff here, I put it together this past weekend. So it'll be continuously updated as more projects get announced, and as the end of the month comes, we'll be updating with the new stuff for the next month. But there's a lot of content that we actually have dates for pretty decently far into the future. A lot of the big releases for Netflix, we have dates for already in December, so there's a good chance. But the best part about this is it's also, the schedule is able to be filtered. So if you're just looking for content from CBS All Access, you can choose that. If you're just looking for kids and family content on Netflix, you can choose that and it'll pop up. So definitely check that out. I'm pretty proud of being able to get that thing together because it didn't take nearly as much time as I thought it would, and it seemed like a no-brainer for anybody out there who's looking to talk about the streaming services. So definitely check that out. In addition to that, you can follow us on Twitter. That is where we are posting all the articles and links to the trailers that we talk about here on the podcast, as well as we post the same articles and links over on our Discord as well. Links to both our Twitter, Instagram, and our Discord are over on the site, as well as Patreon, which is always greatly appreciated if you're interested in supporting us. You can follow us on Instagram for all the latest announcements related to new episodes. Right now, we're releasing the new episodes on Wednesdays and Fridays. That might change in the coming weeks because of Thanksgiving here in the U.S. and a variety of other reasons. So we might be shifting some things around, mostly because anytime the holidays are occurring, there's a lot less news that comes out. So we might bundle some episodes together, or we might just hold off on doing an episode. But one way or the other, we'll be announcing that over on Twitter to keep you guys updated so you're not in the wind about where the episodes are. In addition to that, you can always email us with any questions, comments, concerns, or things you'd just like to talk about regarding the Streaming Wars at thestreamingwars@gmail.com. We will get back in touch with you. And if you have any specific topics that you'd like us to discuss on future episodes, you can submit those via email as well. These episodes are available on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube, so be sure to check out them wherever you would like, and as well as over on the site, thestreamingwars.io. With all that being said, for Tony and myself, this has been The Streaming Wars, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to The Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.